Hello, everybody. Josh and I have been working on the HTTP callout functionality for quite some time now. For the last release, we came together and then we demoed the get functionality. And we have actually a video here on this channel showing that functionality. And then we wrote a blog post together for this release to show you how the post functionality works. Now, Josh told me he was a guest at one of the Trailblazer community user group meetings, and he demonstrated the HTTP callout functionality, and he brought it together with ChatGPT AI functionality, right? So, Josh, can you please tell us how you've done that, and how did that go for you?
Yeah, so it's one of the cool things about working here at Salesforce. Obviously, we're very forward-leaning when it comes to AI, and I had the opportunity to speak to the Blue Ridge Mountain Trailblazer Community Group from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, just about flow in general. Talked a little bit about the different use cases that we have for flow, and then I thought to myself, hey, what would be a fun project to kind of show this group and get people excited about flow. So as part of my own knowledge and training around AI, I've just been playing around a lot with OpenAI, which, for those unfamiliar, ChatGPT is OpenAI. But they have a really robust API and pretty decent documentation. So I thought, hey, how cool would it be to use new functionality from summer 23 with HTTP post and make a call out to ChatGPT on top of not just ChatGPT, but I also found going through the documentation that they also have Dolly as well in their API. So I was able to build two flows, one that uses the traditional ChatGPT, like what most people think of, where I can ask it a question, like what is Salesforce? You see that in the video. And then option two was, hey, what if I return some images, which would be kind of cool. So I built another flow that does exactly that, where I give it a prompt, I ask for a number of images to get returned, does a call to OpenAI that uses Dolly to then return some images to me that I then use inside of a flow where I have a custom component that I built called Flow Carousel that rotates images on a flow screen.
Yeah, and I mean, for the audience, stick around if you want to see that, working in demo, because we have the recording for you at the end of this conversation here, this interview here. But before we go into that, Josh and I wanted to discuss a little bit how this whole AI revolution is going to happen. Where do we see that going, especially for the people who are into low code, into flow? Where would be good use cases? Where do we see dangers? But before we go into all that, just let me just remind you, and Josh is going to do also the same. This is just purely our personal opinion. We do not really represent our employers. Josh works for Salesforce, but we are just doing this like hypothetical, let's say, discussion and bouncing ideas around. So what do you think, Josh?
Yeah, just as you said, this is all my own personal opinion. I've been leaning forward a lot, just learning around a lot about AI, both the harm and good that it's doing. We see a lot of horror stories that we've heard about, things like the recent lawyer that used ChatGPT responses in case law that were not accurate, where code was put into the open world by Samsung. However, we're able to do amazing things where we're able to take maybe an Apex class where I'm struggling with trying to find a bug, and I can put that into ChatGPT and it finds where I'm wrong in my Apex class or returns it back to me. And then like what Salesforce is doing, once again, I'm not trying to like represent like Salesforce, but like Salesforce is kind of bringing that into where we bring in our trust model around it, where we're using OpenAI, ChatGPT, EinsteinGPT, where we're able to kind of put some guardrails up where we can use that to make admins and developers' lives easier here in the near future when it's writing those Apex classes that we saw demoed or creating flows here in the next few months, where I just tell Einstein GPT, I need a flow that updates the case description if the case description is blank with the words update me. And it
That's right.
writes it.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about this before on LinkedIn, for example. What I really think and I hope for is uh, the junior person is going to be able to perform at a much higher level, hopefully, utilizing all these services, right? You know, the AI services. And when it comes to that, I'm not really actually that concerned whether this person is using ChatGPT over Google or something else, as long as the outcome is accurate. And that's where actually the concern comes in. Like you said, you know, we've seen a lot of examples where the AI is hallucinating, and you know, the person who's using the AI doesn't really have the skill set or the experience to be able to evaluate whether that's correct or not. That's where the danger comes in. I guess we just need to uh, understand very well how these functionalities work, and at the same time educate the people on how to use that. Like, you know, in the first days of the search engines, I think, you know, many people didn't know how to use them. And then you would just type in your search query and you would come up with some results that were irrelevant, sometimes inaccurate, but, you know, that kind of got sorted out in time, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, you kind of touched on it. It's no matter what we do, it's always still going to require that human element um, to validate and verify. So I think really what a lot of it's going to boil down to new admins, new developers, new architects. Um, it's all going to boil down to we're training them to use it as a tool and not using AI to do their job. Because I think that's what it's all about. Is it's a tool. It's not a replacement. Um,
That's right. And you know, when it comes to tools like, let's say, ScreenFlow, that's what you have demonstrated. Screen flows are there for us to be able to easily script conversations, guide conversations between, quite often between, you know, the employees and the customers. And we also come up with forms and fill out information for the customers again on those forms.
yeah,
And if we can have AI assist with that, that would be, I would imagine that would be fantastic. It wouldn't do any harm, I would think.
yeah, absolutely amazing. You'll see in the demo. I was asking ChatGPT just what are the definitions of different things, and it did a good job of telling me like I don't know because I think we asked it what the roadmap was for Salesforce Flow in the near future, and it said
Yeah.
that it could tell me because it didn't work for Salesforce. Um,
Yeah.
so um, the great things like that. But I did ask it what Salesforce Flow was, and the definition that came back was fairly textbook. Salesforce help documentation. Just having that type of conversational reaction inside of the screen was huge. Um,
Yeah. And I come from a call center background, and I don't think uh, the chatbot functionality lived up to its potential. You know, like we didn't really see the kind of conversation quality that we expected from chatbots up till today. But now with this functionality coming in, hopefully we are going to have higher quality conversations between humans and AI, and they are going to possibly be able to solve their own problems until they get to human assistance. There could be a volume decrease in those kinds of jobs, I would imagine, but you know, that's kind of inevitable. You know, things are going to evolve, and hopefully those people we are going to educate to use artificial intelligence to be able to deliver higher skilled jobs.
Yeah. And things to think about is like it might take away from those types of those jobs from those type of people, but those people can learn from that and maybe help influence the next generation of AI based off of their experience. Because um, um, my thought on it is like, you know, humans are going to be what drives it. AI can only learn from another machine so much. We have to train those models, and how do we do that? It's the human thought, the human centric thinking. Like, I don't think an AI at any point will ever have those types of emotions. I used to watch a lot of Star Trek. Look at Data from Star Trek. Um,
Yeah,
no matter how much he tried, he wasn't able to get to that full on human emotion. Um, and that's kind of what drives that innovation.
that's cool. A lot of valuable thoughts on the topic. But without further ado, let's watch Josh do his magic.
We're going to do, I talked a little bit earlier, I'm doing an Einstein AI implementation right now. So leading up to that, I started to learn more and more and more about ChatGPT. Everybody's excited about ChatGPT, things like that. But some people don't know is that ChatGPT has an API. That's pretty open, and you can actually sign up for a free account for their API. I want to make a disclaimer here. This is for demonstration purposes only, where I use this API. Just remember that any data that you put into any type of GPT type of AI could be used. Search Samsung and ChatGPT, and you can see kind of like some of the risk of entering in customer data or proprietary data into ChatGPT. So for this example, I'm just going to just kind of take you through something fun, cool you can do inside of your own personal dev org. Wouldn't recommend doing this for a customer org or for your production orgs using the OpenAI API. I do highly recommend because I do work in Salesforce. Once our Einstein AI products become more GA, we have a lot of that data. It's going to be siloed, so you don't have to worry about data loss or something getting opened up to nefarious actors. So next screen flow that I have here, couple things here. We're getting into the more advanced stuff, right? So what this flow is going to do is it's going to use the image generation API from OpenAI and / ChatGPT, however you want to phrase the organization there. So in order to set this up, I had to do a couple of different things. First one of those is I had to create what's called a external credential and name credential. I'm not going to get too deep into this, but just kind of want to highlight it. Our Salesforce help docs, if you search like Salesforce name credential in Google or whatever your search engine is, you can, it'll give you a pretty good step-by-step process in order to create a name credential and external credential. First thing you do is you create an external credential. For this case, I'm doing OpenAI. And basically what this does is it allows me to authenticate into OpenAI servers. So basically I give it a principal where I'm using, in the API documentation, it tells me that I need a pass-through bearer in my authorization header. So when I create a principal, I enter in the name of bearer, and then I put in my API key. And then you create some custom headers here. This is a formula where I'm passing in through where I pass the values from bearer into authorization. Once again, that's laid out in the help documentation inside Salesforce on how to do this. And then I need to pass through what type of data it accepts. In this case, we're doing application JSON. And this whole process can be like an entirely deep dive presentation in its own. So I'm doing like the very brief version of this, just as a reference. So that's the first thing that I do is I go create the credential, and then I create the name credential. And then inside of Flow, if I want to make a call out to an external service, whether that is a GET, and now in summer 23, I could do a post. Prior to summer 23, if I want to do this using the HTTP callout function inside of Salesforce, I could only do a GET. But what I would do is I come in here and I click on action, and we can see here, create HTTP callout. I give it a name. So I'm not going to save any of this, but I just want to take you through the steps. I would choose a name credential. For this one, I'd choose the image creation because this is the URL that I'm going to make the call out to for this case. Doesn't link spaces. 2. Give it a good description. We're going to skip that for right now. And then we're going to give it a create images. This is just going to be the label for my action inside of my flow. And then we see an option for GET or post. GET is generally available. So that means general audience. So it's available to everybody. Post is beta. That means that anybody can use it. However, it might be buggy still. They're trying to get entirely user feedback in the post action. So from here, I can add a specific URL path. So we add hover here. I can place a URL path variables in curly brackets. So that means if I have additional paths that I'm going to follow, so let's say I created just one general name credential with a URL for the API from OpenAI. Each of the functions that I want to do around this API is going to have a specific path. So I could actually take and I could do the last option here. I could put that into curly brackets if that was the case, and have my path. And then if there's any key value pairs I want to add into my query parameters, I can add them here. And then the most important part here is I need to give it a sample request. So I might have it saved on my keyboard from this morning. Yep. So you actually get your sample JSON requests directly from the API documentation for whoever you're doing the call out to. So you click on review, and it's going to give you basically what those values are. It's a string, and then an integer for these different values that I get in the response. So I click on done. So then I also have to give it a sample response. The response is what I'm going to get back from the API. So this is basically telling me what a sample response looks like. I'm getting back URL. I'm going to create it. It's just an integer. In this case, created is the number of images that this post call is going to create. So I already did all this legwork, so I'm not going to click save. So what's next is anytime that you create a API call out, or it creates what's called an enhanced external service inside of Salesforce, and along with that, it creates an Apex class for you called. And from there, what I need to do to use that Apex class inside of Flow is I have to use what's called an Apex defined variable. So I can click on new here. I can do variable. We're just going to say Apex defined. Data type, we choose Apex defined. And then I find that Apex class that has all of those values and variables. So we see it's an external service and its body for this as an example. How that looks in Flow is I have a screen flow where I have a prompt screen. Sorry, I like to use my custom components sometimes because I get more functionality. But this is called Text Area Plus, where you can choose like how you're going to use your text inside of Flow. I'm just doing text input for this, and this actually isn't released yet for those that are using Text Area Plus. It'll come out in one of the future releases. I'm still doing some testing. And then I'm going to give it the number of images that I want to return. So my text input, I'm just entering in a prompt. And then what I'm doing is I have my apex defined variable called callout body for this case, where the prompt, for those that are using ChatGPT, prompt is what you're asking GPT to do. Where I'm using the output from my text array plus component, and then my callout body, I have n, which is part of the API, where I'm entering in the number of images that I want to return, and then size. This is the size of the images that are going to come back from my query. So then this is the action that I actually created, where I just have an option here where I'm using my apex defined variable here called callout body. And then from here, I assign responses. So basically what's going to happen is my get images from open API is going to return something in the 200 field. 200 is a successful call, and it's going to return a variable called data. Once again, I'm assigning that data to an apex defined variable called images RSP collection bar here, because what I want to do is I want to loop through that collection variable, because it's going to come back in a collection. And what a loop does, it allows me to evaluate each item inside of a collection variable. And I can actually do stuff with that. If I need to, I can make changes to that item, or I can just add it to another collection, like what I'm doing here, so on and so forth. So here I have my image URLs, which is a collection. We're going to see why I'm using that here in a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the URL, because that's how your images get returned from this API. It actually comes as an image URL. So I'm going to add my URL to that collection, and then I have an empty collection based off of the component that I'm going to use on my next screen. So it's going to loop through everything that comes from that response, and then after the last item, it's going to display all of those in the screen. And what I'm doing to display all of that in a screen, I'm using a component that I have called flow carousel, where I'm going to pass through those image URLs, and then I don't want a header, so I'm just going to pass through an empty collection there. So what happens is we save, we think everything's going to work, then I'm going to click on debug, and then I need some audience engagement here, so I need a prompt. Somebody give me a prompt. All right, so not getting anybody responding, so we're going to do, since this is the Blue Ridge Mountains, I'm going to say 3 images, and let's see what comes back. For those unfamiliar, OpenAI or ChatGPT actually uses DALL-E to return images. So see what DALL-E comes back with. And look at that. Funny enough, I actually used to live in Black Mountain, just outside of Asheville, so it does look like the Blue Mountains. Directly coming through in my carousel here. If we look at our debug log, we can kind of see how all of this went, how all of this played out. So we entered in our prompt here, our number of images. We see there's 3. I assigned my body values. You see what happened. It did my call out. So it said that it passed through in the body. It said size set true, size 256 by 256. My prompt was true. My prompt was that. My end was set, so on and so forth. And then I got a nice 200. So that means that my call out was successful. Everything was good, and it actually gives me all of the URLs that were here, that were there. So all that came back. Everything looked good. Then I assigned it, and then I looped my responses so I can assign those to a collection variable. Added my image URLs, continued looping, and then we get into my final flow here. I click on finish, and we're good to go. So That's
really cool. Josh, that was neat.
Yeah. Anybody else want to try another prompt?
I was going to say something to do with Salesforce Einstein. You know, what's it bring up?
Let's see. I can tell you, I tried Salesforce Flow earlier today, and it was scary. Let's do 5. Some big ones and pretty scary. So
That's a little terrifying. You're not wrong.
and it says steer force. Love it. All right. One more flow with ChatGPT. So this one, same thing. I did the same API. However, this one I'm using what's called completions, or what most people, when they go to ChatGPT and they enter in a prompt where they ask it a question and they get an answer, and that's actually using what's called a completion inside of ChatGPT. So once again, we're basically doing the same thing. We're giving it a prompt. However, in this prompt, we're only entering in some text because we don't need to return a specific number of responses. We have some different variables that we have to pass through, where I'm passing through the content. I'm also passing through a role. When we talk about ChatGPT and the API, I can actually feed ChatGPT information to train the model as well. So that's another option I can actually do in the API if I have like a full account. Then I basically add through where I'm telling what model to use. I could actually use ChatGPT 4.0 if I wanted, but it's still a little bit buggy. So I didn't. I make my action. I do my call out. I get my choices back. And because it does come back in a collection, I can't just reference a collection. So I need to assign it to a value. So I'm going to loop through. I'm going to assign it to my message text variable. And then I'm going to display that inside of my flow screen. So let's debug this one, and then it's going to take us up towards the end. So here we're entering in our prompt. Let's just go ahead and ask ChatGPT what is Salesforce Flow. We're going to click on next. It's making that call out. It's thinking. There it is. Still allows users to automate and streamline complex business processes in Salesforce. I think I've gone from very basic to a little bit more complex today, I hope, without overwhelming everybody. But we got our response directly back from ChatGPT directly inside of my screen flow here. So just a quick little example of something cool that you could do on your own if you want to learn about APIs and things like that to do it. And then eventually one day in your Salesforce orgs, you'll be able to do things like this in a more siloed type of way directly. But click on finish here. We can kind of see everything that came back from my response. So anybody else have a prompt that you want me to ask ChatGPT while we're on here?
Guillermo said you should ask, what will Salesforce's next automation tool be called?
Good one. Let's see. I see it there. Ha. There you go. It doesn't know. So pretty good question and a good challenge.
I was gonna say only Mark Benioff has the answer.
Yeah.